like to talk to the public about the hurricane in New York City, October 2012, Hurricane Sandy. And that the hurricane has some significant spiritual and physical significance. And that if you look throughout history, God often has sent natural disasters to call humans to repentance, and also as a way of making sure that His will and His plan is pursued on earth. So what I'm going to say is that that hurricane was sent by God to destroy the World Trade Center site, which the globalists who are rebuilding the World Trade Center are calling it a One World Trade Center. And it's done by the globalists, and God has sent that hurricane to destroy that work. It has destroyed that site to teach America that that America is to reject globalisation, and that they're not to be a part of the formation of the one world government or the global government. And there are spiritual reasons for that. That particular site, I wrote a book about what happened. Enough is enough analysis of September 11th, Afghanistan and Iraq. And I wrote and published this book in 2006. And it was all about September 11th. It was about September 11th and what happened. And there's a lot of research in this book. At the time, the research available, and there's a lot more research available now on what happened at that site. There are actually 7 buildings destroyed in that event, not just 2. And it is true by all the research evidence available in the world at that time, and now even more is available, that the United States government was involved in demolishing those buildings with high-tech explosives. And it can be proved beyond a doubt, and that the evidence available is overwhelming in favour of that position. There's a lot of researchers now throughout the world who accept that as true, that there was government interference. And I fully support Australia's relationship with the United States, and particularly its historical relationship as a great ally of Australia. And I'll always support that Australia's relationship with the United States as a great ally and a great friend. But there are some things that happen in life that really are not good, and that was one of them. And this book also goes through the links between the Bush family, business links, and the links between the Middle East families and their relationships, the economic relationships they have with oil and war equipment manufacturing, and there's other issues, lots of issues related to the corruption that's related to what happened. So anyway, that was basically the American government sinned against their own people. They murdered 3,000 of their own people. They used the Arabs to look like that it was that to blame them for what had happened, but it was actually a well orchestrated event going by the research centres. And this hurricane that's been sent is a warning from God for the Americans not to be associated with the globalists, and not to build a One World Trade Center site on that site, and that was a place of evil that had been done. It's New York is the financial capital of the world, supposedly, and the love of money is the source of all kinds of evil. So this global government that the world is going towards includes a global political system, a global economic system, and a global religious system that's anti-Christian, it's anti-Christ. So this is a warning to America not to be involved in this, and that they have to break away from this globalist political system and a globalist economic system, as Australia has to create an economic system independent of the global economic system. And I know how to do that through the banking system, when you understand how to do it. Also, what the Bible teaches about economics is very powerful, and if you don't understand what the Bible's teaching about economics, about the world's economic system, you can't understand how the world economic system really works. So you need to have an understanding of that. Now, there's evidence in the past number of decades, 2 decades at least, where God has sent hurricanes to the United States to stop them from interfering and carving up Israel. So where there's interference in God's plan for Israel, because Israel is the centre point of God's plan for humanity because of the Old Testament, and because Jesus was a Jew, and because the New Testament is also built on the Jewish tradition and the nation of Israel. So it's a centre point to what is happening in the world, and it always will be, and in particular God's plan for this world and for humanity. For example, in October 1991, there was the beginning of the Madrid peace process, which began in October 1991, and there were meetings being conducted, sponsored meetings by George Bush and Mikhail Gorbachev, so the United States and Russia, and they sponsored the Madrid Land for Peace conference, and at that same time that they were basically discussing to in a sense carve up Israel, God sent a hurricane into North Atlantic, into Bush's Kennedy-Bunkport main home. Well, a hurricane that was sent into that area. Also on August of 1992, the 24th of August, the Madrid Peace Conference was continuing in Washington DC, and that's when God sent Hurricane Andrew into Louisiana and Florida, and that was when the leaders, the globalists, were meeting at that time in Washington DC to also continue that Madrid peace process, which was basically essentially about the carving up of the land of Israel. So there are definite natural disasters that were sent at exactly the same time that these global leaders were meeting to try and destroy Israel. There was also on the 15th of January 1994, there was a very large earthquake in Northridge, California, at the same time that Clinton, the President of America at that time, and Syria's Assad were meeting in Geneva, Switzerland to create a plan for Israel to leave the Golan Heights and the Gaza area. And that proved to be the largest earthquake at that time in US history, and that was 15th of January 1994. So it coincided with these talks that these so-called leaders, or these political leaders, were having, where they were interfering with the land of Israel, and that they were planning to destroy Israel, carve it up in some sense, or try and make agreements where Israel's land would be carved up, or where it would they would be forced to leave certain areas because of what they wanted, but that was contrary to what God's plan is for the Middle East. Then in October 2005, there was Hurricane Katrina, Louisiana, Alabama, Mississippi, Southeast Florida, and that was at the same time that talks were being conducted by the globalists about interfering with, that was George Bush interfering with Israel. And also there was a hurricane just recently of Hurricane Sandy in New York, where that totally destroyed the reconstruction of the World Trade Center site, and which they are trying to call, the globalists are trying to call the One World Trade Center, and that's a globalist initiative. So they're different. I've got documentaries that show some evidence of that support what I'm saying. So my point is that natural disasters often are sent by God to call humans, certain countries, to repentance, or because of certain what political leaders are doing, and certain parts of the world, and God sends a natural disaster to try and thwart their plan. Now, the reason why that God does not want the United States to be involved in the globalist vision, and that vision is the formation of a global government, global economic system, and a global religious system, which is anti-Christian. It's a three-pronged factors involved there. The Bible teaches about this, but there's also a lot of organisations and documents within the organisations themselves. The documents coming out of the United Nations, the documents coming out of the European Union, and the documents coming out of the World Bank, the documents coming out of the IMF, and the International Monetary Fund and the World Bank, and they're trying to form a global bank. And over the past number of decades, there are a number of documents that have come out of these organisations which prove that their vision is for a global government and a global economic system and a global political system, a global economic system and a global religious system that is anti-Christian. They do it through creating global organisations, which, if you look into the United Nations documents, there's a lot of documents which talk about a global taxation system and global trade systems, and they do it through trade, and they do it through treaties, and they do it through economic agreements, and they do it through legislation. They also do it through technological control as well. So there's a lot of factors involved in the formation. Anyway, the Christian nations of the earth have to reject this global government. That's the vision of the atheists, if you like, and the globalists, and that they have to form their own economic system within their own sovereign country to avoid this. For example, they're going to try and bring in a global taxation and also a global currency eventually as well, to destroy each nation's currency. The debt in Europe, for example, the global financial crisis and the debt crisis they talk about in Europe is caused by the World Bank, and it's caused by the International Monetary Fund. So they've actually created all the external debt throughout the world for every nation, every sovereign nation. They created it and caused it, and they caused and created the global financial crisis. They did. The World Bank did, and the International Monetary Fund and the international banking system. What they did is they drew economic wealth out of all nations through the international banking system. It's a transfer of wealth is what the global financial crisis was, and they're going to recreate a series of global financial crises in the future to justify their taking control of a nation's economy and a nation's wealth and a nation's resources. So in fact what they're doing, they are stealing. The global financial crisis was a stealing process, a transfer of wealth from sovereign nations and towards the global, the World Bank, the International Monetary Fund, and they did it through the international banking system and corporate and international corporations. So, for example, where you lost your money, you say you lost your money in Australia, for example, in the superannuation, you lost a lot of money because of the GFC. Well, you didn't lose it; it was stolen from you in a transfer of wealth from those investments that your superannuation companies had made, and those investments that they've made in the international economic market, and they lost it pretty much. It was a transfer of wealth. It was taken from you. It was stolen. And that transfer of wealth, where did it go? Well, it wouldn't just go nowhere. It was transferred into thin air. It was transferred towards the World Bank and the IMF and the international banking system. And they are accumulating wealth to make them very rich and very powerful, and a few people very powerful, very controlling of the world economically, and everyone else is they're going to try and enslave humanity in this way through political control, economic control, and religious control, which is anti-Christian. That's what the Bible teaches, and also there are an enormous number of documents coming out of these organisations which teach the same thing, which concur with the same vision that they had for the world. Now, America has to become independent of this global system that they're forming, and this trade site cannot be built on this site, and this hurricane has been sent to destroy the reconstruction of this site, and to teach the Americans that you cannot allow the globalists to do that in your country. What was done on that site was pretty much an inside job, and that there is sin there, and that, you know, trying to teach America that you have to not be corrupt and not be part of this corrupt globalist system, that you need to become economically independent of this global economic system. And one indicator of that is in Daniel chapter 11. In Daniel chapter 11 verse, I'll read from verse 25. It says that, well, this is when the Antichrist is ruling. With a large army he will stir up his strength and courage against the king of the south. So the king of the north in Daniel chapter 11 is the Antichrist. There's a fourth king that comes. There's three king leaders preceding him. And it says, with a large army he will stir up his strength and courage against the king of the south. The king of the south will wage war with a large and very powerful army. Verse 25, with a large army he, that's the Antichrist, will stir up his strength and courage against the king of the south. The king of the south will wage war with a large and very powerful army, but he will not be able to stand because of the plots devised against him. Those who eat from the king's provisions will try to destroy him. His army will be swept away and many will fall in battle. The two kings, with their hearts bent on evil, will sit at the same table and lie to each other, but to no avail, because an end will still come at the appointed time. The king of the north, that's the Antichrist, will return to his own country with great wealth, but his heart will be set against the holy covenant. He will take action against it and then return to his own country. At the appointed time he will invade the south again, but this time the outcome will be different from what it was before. And here's the key verse for the United States. Ships of the western coastlands will oppose him, and he will lose heart. Then he will turn back and vent his fury against the holy covenant. He will return and show favour to those who forsake the holy covenant. His armed forces will rise up to desecrate the temple fortress and will abolish the daily sacrifice. Then they will set up the abomination that causes desolation. That's the image they set up in the wing of the temple. This is in the Jerusalem temple that they're going to rebuild. With flattery he will corrupt those who have violated the covenant, but the people who know their God will firmly resist him. Those who are wise will instruct many, though for a time they will fall by the sword or be burnt or captured or plundered. When they fall they will receive a little help, and many who are not sincere will join them. Some of the wise will stumble, so that they may be refined, purified and made spotless until the time of the end, for it will still come at the appointed time. Now what that teaching says in Daniel chapter 11 verse 30, ships of the western coastlands will oppose him and he will lose heart. So the United States is destined to fight the Antichrist at the end of time by sending ships, and so therefore they are not to be a part of this global formation. That they are, like Australia, to create an economic system independent of the global economic system, and they have to do that through the banking sector by recreating Commonwealth-owned banks and state-owned banks, again, as we had in the past, a national-owned bank, and the state banking system, which is parliamentary controlled. Also, so therefore, this hurricane is a warning to America to not proceed with the building of this building, which is globalist, and also to not support any formation of a global government or a global economic system, and not to support the formation of a global religious system, which is going to be anti-Christian, anti-Christ, and that they are to maintain and recreate their political and economic system as independent of the global political and economic system, as Australia has to. and that their country is a Christian country, and that they are to serve the Lord in that manner. So that's a warning to them, that hurricane, and also it's a indication that they were going to fight the Antichrist. They were going to fight, well, this teaching in Daniel chapter 11 verse 30 is that the United States is going to be fighting the Antichrist at the end of time by sending a big fleet of ships to help the nations south of Israel fight the Antichrist at the end of time, because pretty much the nations south of Israel are going to be Christian in nature, and it's going to be the nations north of Israel versus the nations south of Israel in this battle, and that's what the book of Daniel is teaching, and that what is happening in the Middle East is indicative of the formation of a global government, and that most of the nations south of Israel will oppose this eventually, and that the United States also will oppose it, and that they will send ships from the western coastlands to fight the Antichrist at the end of time. And so it's all leading up to the second coming of Jesus. Is going to come back, return, take all the Christians out of the world, and destroy the 666 people before while the Antichrist is ruling, but before the Battle of Armageddon. So this battle that's leading towards a big battle at the end of time, the rapture will occur before that battle, before the Battle of Armageddon, that day and that hour, and that will be all the Antichrist armies of the world, 200 million strong army, Antichrist army of all nations of the world who are Antichrist, coming up against Israel in that big army. But Jesus is going to destroy them. When God sends Jesus, he's going to, in the Battle of Armageddon, Jesus will destroy all those armies. He'll destroy the Antichrist, and he'll destroy all the 666 people as well. I just want to talk about the teaching, one of the teachings in 1 Corinthians chapter 1 verse 18, from that verse where a lot of people watching this broadcast will not understand what I'm saying. And that is because if you're an atheist, you probably won't understand what I'm saying, because you've rejected the Bible, you've rejected God, you've rejected Jesus Christ as the Son of God, and so you won't study the Bible. Or I encourage all humans on earth to study the Bible, read the Bible, and particularly the New Testament, to understand what God's plan is for humanity and for the future. But if you don't read it, or you don't study it, or you don't want to, you reject it, then you won't understand what I'm saying, because you think that the gospel is foolishness. The gospel, or the message of Christ, is foolishness for those who are perishing. So the people who don't believe what I'm saying, or think that, basically, you're rejecting what I'm saying, we're rejecting what the Bible is teaching, then you think that the cross of Christ is foolishness to you, but in fact, you are perishing. The Bible is teaching that if you reject the cross of Christ, you are perishing. And so from my perspective, that means that you're the foolish one. So, but it's a battle between two teams, you see. It's the Jesus team and it's Satan's team. If you don't belong to God, if you don't belong to Christ, Jesus Christ, you belong to Satan. So you're on the Satan team and you're choosing that team. But I encourage you to choose the Jesus team. And if you don't choose the Jesus team, you are by default choosing Satan's team. And for you, what I'm teaching is probably foolishness, because it's foolishness to those who are perishing. And the evidence is here, 1 Corinthians chapter 1 verse 18, for the message of the cross is foolishness to those who are perishing. But to us who have been saved, it is the power of God. For it is written, I will destroy the wisdom of the wise, the intelligence of the intelligent I will frustrate. Where is the wise man? Where is the scholar? Where is the philosopher of this age? Has not God made foolish the wisdom of the world? For since in the wisdom of God the world through its wisdom did not know him, God was pleased through the foolishness of what was preached to save those who believe. Jews demand miraculous signs and Greeks look for wisdom, but we preach Christ crucified, a stumbling block to Jews and foolishness to Gentiles. But to those whom God has called, both Jews and Greeks, Christ the power of God and the wisdom of God. For the foolishness of God is wiser than man's wisdom, and the weakness of God is stronger than man's strength. Think of what you were when you were called. Not many of you were wise by human standards, not many were influential, not many were of noble birth. But God chose the foolish things of the world to shame the wise. God chose the weak things of the world to shame the strong. He chose the lowly things of this world and the despised things and the things that are not, to nullify the things that are. It is because of him that you are in Christ Jesus, who has become for us wisdom from God. That is our righteousness, holiness, and redemption. Therefore, as it is written, let him who boasts, boast in the Lord. And when I come to you, I did not come with eloquence or superior wisdom, as I proclaimed to you the testimony about God. For I resolved to know nothing while I was with you, except Jesus Christ and him crucified. I came to you in weakness and fear, and with much trembling. My message and my preaching were not with wise and persuasive words, but with a demonstration of the Spirit's power, so that your faith might not rest on men's wisdom, but on God's power. That's Paul the Apostle teaching there. And he goes on to say, Paul the Apostle teaching to the Corinthians, and he goes on to say, we do, however, speak a message of wisdom among the mature, but not the wisdom of this age or of the rulers of this age, who are coming to nothing. No, we speak of God's secret wisdom, a wisdom that has been hidden and that God destined for our glory before time began. None of the rulers of this age understood it, for if they had, they would not have crucified the Lord of glory. However, as it is written, no eye has seen, no ear has heard, no mind has conceived what God has prepared for those who love him. But God has revealed it to us by his Spirit. The Spirit searches all things, even the deep things of God. For who among men knows the thoughts of a man? For who among men knows the thoughts of a man, except the man's spirit within him? In the same way, no one knows the thoughts of God except the Spirit of God. We have not received the spirit of the world, but the Spirit who is from God, that we may understand what God has freely given us. This is what we speak, not in words taught us by human wisdom, but in words taught by the Spirit, expressing spiritual truths in spiritual words. The man without the Spirit does not accept the things that come from the Spirit of God, for they are foolishness to him, and he cannot understand them because they are spiritually discerned. The spiritual person makes judgments about all things, but he himself is not subject to any man's judgment. For who has known the mind of the Lord, that he may instruct him? But we have the mind of Christ. So, you see, for the Christian people throughout the world, you will be able to understand what I'm saying. And for the non-Christian people throughout the world, you will think that it's foolishness, what I'm saying. Because the gospel, or the message of Christ, what the Spirit is teaching, and the message of the cross of Christ is foolishness to those who are perishing. I've got some more evidence in a documentary that supports what I'm saying about the natural disasters, and that Hurricane Sandy is a call to repentance for the people of the United States to not build that trade centre, the One World Trade Centre on that site, because God has destroyed it with that hurricane.
Nowadays, all we have to do is turn on our televisions to realize that the Lord is certainly speaking to us. The wars and rumors of wars that we hear so much about are the signs of the end times. These are things that Jesus said would happen. But Jesus himself said the end is still to come. Perhaps this means that we should be looking for the opposite of war, that is peace in the Middle East. The Antichrist is the one who will be able to bring this about. And when this happens, we'll know the end will be near.
Famine has also become very familiar to the world, along with the disturbing power and frequency of natural disasters, such as earthquakes, volcanic eruptions, hurricanes, and even tsunamis. It should come as no surprise to Christians that the Bible predicts just such a turn of events. But even those who are unaware of the biblical prophecies can see the evidence of their fulfillment in headlines around the globe.
Hurricanes, earthquakes, volcanic activity, tsunamis. Right now we're seeing some of the most destructive geophysical forces in recorded history. The Pakistan earthquake, in terms of loss of human life, could very well be the most devastating ever.
Here in the United States, scientists are beginning to pay more attention to the volcanic wonder we call Yellowstone National Park. Actually, the park is situated within a caldera, or opening of what was once a gigantic volcano more than 50 miles across.
People tend to forget that all of this scenic beauty sits on top of 2,400 cubic miles of volcanic magma. That's about 5,000 times the amount that was ejected during Mount St. Helens' 1980 eruption. This sleeping giant has recently shown signs of awakening, and it is a terrifying prospect if it should blow its lid.
Living in a country like America, it's sometimes difficult to imagine the kind of destruction the Bible speaks of ever coming to pass. Yet as we've seen, possibilities are there, just below the surface. There's no doubt something is going on, but are these really the signs of the times that Jesus spoke of, or simply a surge in Earth's natural cycle of such events? Many of the most respected Bible scholars in the world believe that we are truly seeing the very signposts Jesus spoke of. Does this mean that the tribulation, the worst period of death, destruction, and moral decay the world has ever seen, might just be about to begin? And if it is possible that the end is near, where will Christians be when these awful days fall upon the world? Interestingly enough, the strange turn of events in the natural world have not gone unnoticed by the modern scientific community. What do they have to say about our planet's unusual behavior? Could it be that science has taken a seat at the prophetic table? Many people, even some Christians, find it difficult to believe the ancient biblical prophets could have so accurately predicted events occurring today. The evidence of Earth's violent activity is just one example. But what about society as a whole? Are sociologists and anthropologists finding a similar destructive pattern? And does the Bible predict such a trend during the end times? The Apostle Paul, writing from prison to his protege Timothy, said, "There will be terrible times in the last days. People will be lovers of themselves, lovers of money." Today his warning sounds all too familiar.
The final age of this world is to be a time of troubles. Men will love nothing but money and self. They will be arrogant, boastful, and abusive, with no respect for parents, no gratitude, no piety, no natural affection. They will be implacable in their hatreds, scandalmongers, intemperate and fierce, strangers to all goodness, traitors, adventurers, swollen with self-importance. They will be men who put pleasure in the place of God, men who preserve the outward form of religion, but are a standing denial of its reality. So these men deny the truth. They have lost the power to reason and cannot pass the test of faith.
You don't have to look far to see that this description is consistent with our contemporary culture. Skeptics, of course, will say that Paul's words could describe the social conditions in almost any age. That may be true to some degree, but is it possible that as this generation continues to push the moral boundaries further and further, we find ourselves closer than ever to fulfilling the conditions Paul described?
When you look at the older generations, they married younger. They didn't have premarital sex. We didn't have abortion. But when you look at the kids who are now getting married today, they're getting married older. They had a tremendous amount of sex and abortion, venereal disease, including AIDS. The previous generations in high school, their biggest problems were gun chewing, cutting in line, where you fast forward 2 generations and all of a sudden it's drugs, sex, money, violence. They're navigating a minefield.
The signs seem to be all around us. Even modern science finds itself confirming the predictions of the ancient prophets. Throughout the centuries, another biblical end times prophecy has raised eyebrows, as people of faith have wondered how it might ever be fulfilled.
And something like a huge mountain, all ablaze, was thrown into the sea. A third of the sea turned to blood. A third of the living creatures in the sea died. and a third of the ships were destroyed.
How likely is it that something like a flaming mountain will be cast into the sea? Surprisingly, perhaps, through the magic of technology, most of us today have actually witnessed a similar event in our solar system.
As the fragments of Comet Shoemaker Levy 9 slammed into Jupiter, we saw phenomenal explosions. Great dark spots were left like bruises across the face of Jupiter, and that grabbed a lot of people's attention when we saw that the areas of those bruises were 4 or 5 times the surface area of the Earth. We have to ask the question, what would have happened if it had been the Earth in the firing line?
The impact that formed Chicxulub crater was truly catastrophic. The amount of energy released was the equivalent of 10,000 times the nuclear arsenal of humanity. That's all American and Russian bombs put together. At ground zero, that blew the whole atmosphere away. After the impact, a gigantic fireball wrapped around the globe. Billions of tons of molten and vaporized shattered rock were propelled skyward.
As recently as 1996, an asteroid about a third of a mile wide passed within 280,000 miles breadth by astronomical standards. Had it hit the Earth, it would have caused an explosion in the 5,000 to 12,000 megaton range, over 1,000 times greater than the bomb that was dropped on Hiroshima, Japan.
Near misses of the Earth occur uncomfortably frequently. In fact, every year, we believe, an object with more energy than that of the largest nuclear weapon ever tested misses the Earth by a lesser distance than that to the Moon. The Earth has been hit many times in the past by asteroids and comets. We've got a long history. We can tell that from the craters. In fact, maybe millions of years before the next time we get hit by an asteroid, it may be tomorrow.
For people with no hope for the future, these dire predictions are too frightening to consider. For those who have their hope in Christ, know God not only has an eternal plan, but that their eternal future is positive, and it's in His hands. Yet with all that's going on around us, we can't help but wonder, are we living in the last generation? And if we are, will Christ's church remain on earth to see all these end-time prophecies fulfilled? Some say yes, but others believe that Christians will be spared from some of these dark days by being taken out in an event called the rapture. Or will we miss the tribulation entirely? If you know even a little about end-time Bible prophecy, you know the experts disagree on one very crucial point. When will the church be caught up to meet Christ in the air? This event, commonly referred to as the rapture, has been placed by various experts at different points in the prophetic timeline. Some say it will happen before the Great Tribulation spoken of in the book of Revelation. Some predict it will occur in the middle of this terrible 7-year period. And others insist it must come after the tribulation has taken place. Now you may be asking yourself, does the timing really matter? Well, the more you know about these dark days, the more you'll understand why it matters very much.
Think about man's worst inhumanities to man in modern times. Genocide in Uganda, billions killed during the Pol Pot regime in Cambodia, and of course the Nazi Holocaust in Germany, in which millions of Jews were killed. Take a deep breath and realize that the tribulation will be worse, much worse, than all of these things combined.
It all begins with the Antichrist, a wolf in sheep's clothing who will convince the world that he alone can usher in world peace, yet ultimately will bring destruction and damnation. In the book of Revelation, the Apostle John writes about this dark figure as seen in a vision he received from God.
I looked, and there before me was a white horse. Its rider held a bow, and he was given a crown, and he rode out as a conqueror, bent on conquest.
The Antichrist is the first of 4 horsemen of the apocalypse that will appear in the end times.
Many people will be deceived by the Antichrist, and especially those who are unaware of what the Bible says about the end times. For those who do not know God's Word, it is clear that when the Antichrist arrives on the scene, he will come as a man of peace. He will be very attractive, and he will seem to solve the world's problems. He is the counterfeit Christ, and many people will worship him thinking that he is the Messiah, but he's not. And those people will be deceived by him.
The Bible tells us that the world will put their trust in this charismatic leader in hopes of finally achieving world peace. Using an internationally recognized body such as the United Nations, he will establish a one-world government. As a result, nations will relinquish their own power to become subservient to him. God's Word also reveals that the Antichrist totalitarian regime will use political, religious, and economic pressure to control every person on earth. The Antichrist will become a global dictator, and when the time is right, he will take control of the world's commerce to the point where no one will be able to buy or sell anything without taking his dreaded mark of 666.
Some people see the framework for the one world government and a cashless society already taking shape. More and more we are moving away from paper and coin money and using plastic and barcodes to not only transact business, but to convey information about each transaction to entities that track business trends. Whether or not this is the system the Antichrist will eventually use, the Bible warns us that anyone who takes the mark of the beast is doomed to spend eternity in hell. Yet anyone who refuses the mark will be hunted down and killed.
The remaining three horsemen spoken of in the book of Revelation unleash increasingly terrible events. The red horseman carries a large sword and represents war. He is given the power to take peace from the earth. Many scholars believe he represents a conflict that will bring death to earth on a massive scale. He is World War III, chemical warfare, and a nuclear holocaust, all rolled into one. The third horseman rides a black horse and symbolizes the famine and disease that often follow in the wake of war. But the fourth rider is the worst of them all.
I looked, and there before me was a pale horse. Its rider was named Death, and Hades was following close behind him. They were given power over a fourth of the earth to kill by sword, famine, and plague, and by the wild beasts of the earth.
When this begins, we may see as much as 1/4 of our population, well over 1 billion people, die as a result. And if the conflict goes to the level of nuclear warfare, then the nuclear fallout and mass destruction could easily render land that was once fertile into a wasteland, with famine being the end result. When we consider the verses in Revelation 6, it's important to remember that the rider of the pale horse, named Death, is followed close behind by Hades. That's significant because it means that those slain are unbelievers, for upon death, believers do not go to Hades, but straight to the Savior's side. In 1 Thessalonians chapter 4.
For the Lord himself will descend from the heavens with a shout, with the voice of an archangel, and with the trumpet of God. And the dead in Christ will rise first. Then we who are alive and remain shall be caught up together with them in the clouds to meet the Lord in the air. And thus we shall always be with the Lord.
Christians the world over look forward to this amazing day. But can we be sure it will take place before the tribulation? The most knowledgeable theologians and Bible scholars disagree on this very point.
Those who believe in a post-tribulational view of the rapture have several key points to their argument. They ask, why would God give us so much information about the end times and about the tribulation? Why would he have his prophets write out in detail what will take place? Why would Jesus himself tell us in Mark chapter 13 that false Christs and false prophets would appear and perform signs and miracles to deceive even the elect if that was possible? Why would all this be true if Christians are not going to be here to experience this for themselves? They believe that many people will be deceived by the false Messiah or the Antichrist because they've been taught to believe that the church will be raptured before the tribulation begins. So they will see this very attractive figure appear on the world scene and assume that he is the Christ.
Let's disagree on when the rapture will take place. Can we at least pinpoint when the tribulation will begin? And if Christians are here at this time, we'll be able to recognize that great dark figure of biblical prophecy, the Antichrist, when he arrives on the scene. Living in a country as blessed and free as America, a future so bleak is hard to imagine. But that raises another question. What role will America play in the last act of the drama? Will the United States side with the forces of God or the armies of Satan? And when will the great and final conflict of mankind take place, the Battle of Armageddon? At the start of the 21st century, the ancient past is always at hand to remind us of God's eternal truths. In the Megiddo prison complex in Israel, a prisoner was removing rubble from the planned site of a new ward when his shovel uncovered the edge of an elaborate mosaic, revealing what many archaeologists are saying may be the Holy Land's oldest church.
What's most exciting about this find is that it dates from the decades before Constantine legalized the church in AD 312. The mosaics there tell the story of a Roman officer and a woman named Achaetus who donated money to build a church in the memory of the God, Jesus Christ. It's also interesting that the remains of the church were discovered near the plains of Armageddon, Megiddo, at a time when many religious scholars believe we're facing a very real possibility, the possibility of the last great battle taking place near this very spot.
So how much time remains before the last great conflict begins? The great prophetic clock of the end-time prophecy seems to be winding down to that very moment.
The armies of the world will gather to fight the Battle of Armageddon. It'll be the bloodiest, most horrific battle in the history of mankind. Christ's second coming will stop the battle. All the world will witness his glorious return. He'll save Jerusalem and defeat the forces of the Antichrist.
Following Christ's second coming, the Bible tells us that Jesus will institute a 1,000-year period of true world peace, the millennium. In essence, he will show the world what life on earth could have been like had mankind chosen to follow God from the beginning. According to the Bible, all this will take place at the end of the tribulation. So then, when will the tribulation begin?
Jesus could come at any moment. That's why Jesus also urged his disciples to be ready, so we too must be ready.
But we cannot know the exact timing of God's plan. He's given us all we need to know in the Bible. For example, the ancient prophecies are detailed enough to tell us of one key event that will begin the final countdown to the tribulation and ultimately to the Battle of Armageddon. What's more, the Bible also tells us who the key players in this final battle will be, and their names are very familiar.
According to the Bible, the Middle East crisis will continue to grow until it threatens the peace of the whole world. This will bring a world leader to the forefront who will be welcomed with open arms. He is the Antichrist. He will make a strong covenant with the people of Israel and bring a peace to the region. According to the prophet Daniel, the minute the leader of Israel and the Antichrist sign this pact, the great timepiece will begin ticking once again. 7 years of tribulation are then allotted before the final battle of Armageddon.
The prophet Ezekiel talks about the time when nations from the north will come against Israel. Led by a prince named Gog, most people believe that's Russia, along with other nations, Persia, which most people believe is Iran, Libya, Ethiopia, will come against the nation of Israel.
John the Revelator adds considerable detail to Ezekiel's account. For example, John tells us the size of the army that will be assembled for the final battle is 200,000 or 200 million men. John tells us he heard the number of them.
The world, according to the prophets, scientists, and military experts, now appears to be politically and geographically aligned to see these prophecies fulfilled. What role, if any, will America play in all of this? Most people think of the United States as a strong ally to Israel, but has the U.S. unwittingly harmed Israel in the quest for peace in the Middle East? And if so, is there a price to be paid for these actions?
America is married to two ancient brothers, the Arab and the Jew, Ishmael and Isaac in prophecy. One marriage was because of black gold, oil. The second marriage was over guilt, the death of 6 million Jews as America hardened its heart, closed its borders, and turned its head.
With the rise of terrorism in the Middle East and the situation with the Palestinians getting more volatile day by day, the nation of Israel has become the focus of world attention. In 1991, the President of the United States initiated the Madrid peace process. This plan was for Israel to give up land for peace. The land involved the West Bank, Golan Heights, Gaza, and specifically Jerusalem. The problem with the Madrid peace process is that God has promised the land of Israel to the Jewish people as in an everlasting covenant, and that the prophets mention that whoever divides this land will face judgment from God. In Zechariah chapter 14, the prophet says, "In that day I will seek to destroy all the nations that have come against Jerusalem."
Could it be that in its attempt to achieve such a worthy objective as peace in the Middle East, America has inadvertently put itself prophetically in harm's way? Has her peace initiatives caused her to come against Israel?
But I encourage you to read the prophets Zechariah and Joel, which clearly state that God will judge the nations that attempt to divide his covenant land.
Matter of fact, the Bible speaks about in Genesis 12:3, those nations or those people that bless the Jewish people will be blessed, and those who curse them will be cursed. The United States has experienced many, many years of blessing because we have been really the only nation in the world that is a true friend of the nation of Israel. However, in October of 1991, President George Bush and Mikhail Gorbachev, the Russian president, sponsored the Madrid Land for Peace Conference. And this was the beginning of many catastrophes and catastrophic events that affected the United States going forward. What happened in Madrid is George Bush was talking about Israel giving up their land for promises of peace and security. The perfect storm that had developed in the Northeast Atlantic was sending 30-foot waves into President Bush's Kennebunkport, Maine home. August 24th, 1992, the Madrid Conference convened in Washington, D.C. On the very same day, Hurricane Andrew, the largest hurricane at that time in U.S. history, pummeled the state of Louisiana and Florida. This was a devastating storm that happened at the same time Israel's land was being discussed in meetings in Washington, D.C. On January 15, 1994, President Bill Clinton and President of Syria, Hafez Assad, were in Geneva, Switzerland, calling on Israel to leave the Golan Heights. Within 24 hours, a major earthquake hit in the center of Northridge, California, producing the largest earthquake in U.S. history, and at that time, the second largest disaster in U.S. history. Many of us heard and watched Israel leaving the city of Gaza. On August 24th, the day the final Jews were evicted from Gaza and northern Samaria, Tropical Storm Depression 12 formed near the Bahamas. Within 24 hours, it was Tropical Storm Katrina. Within 72 hours, it was Hurricane Katrina, hitting southeast Florida. 72 hours later, Hurricane Katrina hit Louisiana, Mississippi, and Alabama, producing the largest disaster in U.S. history that dwarfs 9/11, Hurricane Andrew, and the Northridge earthquake in size and intensity.
God has blessed America in innumerable ways, but it seems that he has clearly not forgotten his promises to Israel. Has America felt the wrath of God for the recent stance it's taken on the Middle East? Is God sending us a message through an uncanny sequence of natural disasters timed to coincide with key events?